So here's a statement that'll surprise nobody. Genshin lore is dense. I thought that researching 52 artifacts would be easy. Nope. It turns out in order to understand the full context of artifact lore, I had to go back and read weapon descriptions, ascension materials, read some of the in-game books, and look at past world quests. That's why if you look in the left corner of the video, you'll see a little graphic that lists any additional sources that I had to look up for this video. I did my best to understand, summarize, and condense a lot of the artifact lore into this video, but I'm not perfect. I don't claim to be an expert on Genshin lore. If I got something wrong, please hit me with an actually. I would rather be corrected than continue to parrot wrong information. The only thing I ask is that you be respectful. Anyways, enough introduction, let's yap about Genshin artifact lore. Let's start off by talking about Mondstadt's past and look at the Noblesse Oblige set. These artifacts were worn by the old Mondstadt aristocracy. In the golden age of the aristocracy, they used to be virtuous, principled, and came from humble origins. They used their wisdom for the benefit of all of Mondstadt, but as time went on, the nobles were seduced by power and oppressed the people. For example, in the gladiator set, in Mondstadt's past, there was a gladiator who fought in the arena to win his freedom. He was undefeated in every victory. His master Eberhard would praise him and encourage the gladiator to keep fighting in the arena. Blinded by the glory from the crowd and from his master, the gladiator never escaped the arena. One fateful day, he fought Vanessa and died. In his last moments, he had hoped that his master would be pleased by his final performance, but his master had already left and abandoned the gladiator. Our next set is the Wanderer's Troupe set. This set was worn by a group of warrior musicians that had traveled all around Teyvat, including a place called Marechaussee, but their journey ended in Mondstadt. The group had 4 members: the conductor, the sojourner, the Dawnlight swordswoman, and Kreuzlied. The troupe had tried to usurp Mondstadt's old aristocracy, but had failed and the group disbanded. The conductor and the sojourner had died during the failed coup, but it wasn't all that bad. The Dawnlight swordswoman had met Diluc's ancestor Ragnvinder and inspired him to join the fight against the aristocracy, while Kreuzlied had created an underground organization that helped Vanessa's rebellion. It's unclear how he died. The Sojourner from the Wanderer's Troupe has his own set. The Sojourner was from Fontaine originally, and the time that he spent with the Wanderer's Troupe were some of the happiest moments of his life. While they were in Mondstadt, he fell in love with a woman. However, she was chosen to be the Ludi Harpastum princess, which during Mondstadt's aristocracy meant that she would be forced to marry a member of the Lawrence clan. The rest of the story we know. The Sojourner and the troupe staged a coup, but failed. His biggest regret was that he found the love of his life, but could no longer sing any love songs. Our next set is about one of the more interesting characters in Mondstadt's history, which is the Bloodstained chivalry set. Trained by Rostrum, a knight of Favonius. Back then, he was a paragon of justice and fought in a bright white armor, slaying monsters in the pursuit of justice. He even saved a young maiden who gave him a flower. During the Cataclysm, the chivalrous knight would be consumed by bloodshed. Quote, I began to lose myself in cutting, slashing, and piercing. When my blade's edge met my foe's flesh, it sent a tingle up my spine. He became less human than the monsters he slayed, and even the people that he wanted to protect were afraid of him. He chose to go deep into the abyss and die fighting monsters, but this is where he found Conria, and learned about the fate of its people. The people of Conria were turned to hilichurls, and he saw their fate as the ultimate injustice and pledged his loyalty to the abyss. The code of chivalry tolerates no such injustice. If the abyss be thy name, I pledge to you my loyalty. I mentioned that before the Bloodstained Knight became corrupted, he saved a maiden. This story is about her. After she was saved by a knight in shining armor, they exchanged flowers and she fell deeply in love with him. Many suitors would come and give her flowers, but it didn't matter because their names and faces were not worth remembering. Even as time passed her and she grew older and older, her love for that knight stayed the same, and so she would wait for her white knight to return. But as we know from the Bloodstained chivalry set, he would never return. For me, I think this is what makes the story so tragic. The knight in shining armor lives only in her memories. She died always believing in that pure and idealistic version of him, and that ignorance is bliss because I cannot imagine the pain that she would feel if she learned the truth. The Brave Heart set is about Arundelen, a previous Grand Master of the Knights of Favonius. He was childhood friends with Rostam, and the two would play in the forest. Arundelen pretended to be part of Vanessa's rebellion, and Rostam pretended to be a knight for the aristocracy. They also followed a Seelie and found a small yellow flower. The two grew up and joined the Knights of Favonius, but then the Cataclysm started and Rostam would die on his expedition to Conria. This broke Arundelen, so he left the Knights of Favonius and went back to his childhood home. He found the only thing that stayed the same, which was that small yellow flower from his childhood. Earlier I mentioned someone named Rostam, who mentioned the Bloodstained Knight. Rostam bore the Defender's will set and was also a knight of Favonius. He was childhood friends with Arundelen and was the type of man that never drank alcohol and was prepared for any situation. He also fell in love with a young woman who would sing in the town square. Why is this detail important? Well, let's get to the next set, which is the Witch of Crimson Flame set. As you can probably guess, the maiden that Rostam fell in love with was Senora, but her real name was Rosalind. She left Mondstadt to study at the academia, and Rostam gave her a timepiece to count down until they were reunited after her studies. Unfortunately, while she was studying in Sumeru, the Cataclysm occurred and Rostam died in battle. In her grief, she gave up her humanity and became consumed by liquid fire, which scarred her face and body, becoming the Witch of Crimson Flame. She then spent her time isolated, only using her flames on monsters. But her story doesn't end there, because in the Pale Flame set, it's about Piero recruiting the Harbingers like he's Nick Fury. He found Senora and gave her a cryo delusion. She joined the Fatui to fight against gods and the Abyss. Piero also traveled to Sumeru to recruit Dottore, who wanted to create enhanced humans and even gods. While the academia thought that he was a madman, Piero saw an ally and gave him the resources to let Dottore cook. Scaramouche joined the Fatui for shits and giggles. Though, to be fair, this is also Scaramouche's lowest point of his life. Pantalone was born poor in Liyue and was not favored by the gods with a vision, so he pursued wealth. His resentment for the gods and his pursuit for financial domination is why he forged a contract with Piero. Snezhnaya is an economic superpower partially because of him. We also learned Piero is from Conria and joined the Fatui to get revenge on Celestia and the Heavenly Principles for their destruction of his homeland. Our next set is the Blizzard Strayer set. This set is about Imonlocker, a hero that lived in Salvinendagnir, an ancient civilization on the top of current-day Dragonspire. A celestial knell fell and the city was sealed by cloud and mist, and snowstorms wouldn't end, so Imonlocker decided to go on a journey and find a way to save the city. The princess also gave him the Snow Tomb Star Silver sword as protection. Unfortunately, he never found a solution, and when he returned to Salvinendagnir, everybody had already died. Angry at Celestia, he abandoned his greatsword and dedicated the rest of his life to war. The Thunder Soother set was owned by an unnamed man whose family was sacrificed in a ritual. He then wore a flower and drank from a goblet that gave him the strength and courage to face and slay the Beasts of Thunder. What's interesting about this set is that it's completely disconnected from much of Genshin's lore, and there's still a lot of mystery surrounding it. It doesn't say what region he was from or what the Beast of Thunder is. In the diadem, it just says that the past can never be fully pacified, which sounds very ominous and sounds like it has much bigger implications. The next set I want to talk about is the Viridescent Venereer set. This set belonged to Viridescent, Queen of the Hunters. She was taught to live in tune with the laws of nature, and she lived a peaceful life only hunting beasts and birds for survival. That sounds really nice. Guess what time period she lived in? That's right, the Cataclysm. During this time, the Dendro Archon Rukkhadevata had died and nature no longer spoke. It was one night that she found a young blind boy who was attacked by monsters and dying. The young boy was looking for his brother, who was the Bloodstained Knight, and for the first time, she hunted not for survival, but for revenge. While on this path of revenge, she went through erosion and forgot about her original principles and even forgot about the young boy. Her life ended when she met the Bloodstained Knight, who struck her down because she was more beast than human. The Heart of the Depth set is about two people. Skipper, a Liyuean sailor who hunted sea monsters, and his chief mate Parzival, an exiled Mondstadt aristocrat who abandoned nobility and became a refugee on Skipper's ship. Parzival was noble born, but he became a Robin Hood type figure, stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. One night, while on a heist, he met a young woman with blue eyes, maybe named Josephine, and gave her a sapphire. A nobleman found out that she had the sapphire and she was branded on her face with the mark of a thief. Since then, she swore vengeance on Parzival and became known as the Blue-Eyed Spear Witch. Parzival was deceived by his brother Eberhard and fled to Liyue. Skipper was a captain of the ship and was feared by ordinary people and his crew, except for his navigator, who was a young woman that sang sea shanties. One day, Skipper and his crew faced their greatest challenge yet, a sea monster so massive and vast that it dwarfed every other monster they had faced. This was one monster that Skipper could not beat. Everyone in his crew had died, and he would be next if it wasn't for his navigator, who sacrificed herself to save him. This is when Skipper and Parzival first met. Skipper was rebuilding his crew to get revenge on the beast. Parzival had become an alcoholic and joined the crew. Skipper would then slay the beast, but he and Parzival had also died in the process. As we move on to Liyue, the first set I want to talk about is the Archaic Petra set, which is about Rex Lapis's feats during the Archon War. According to legend, Rex Lapis made gold flowers bloom from barren rocks, which could be literal or it could be a metaphor for Liyue. He also invented the sundial and created goblets that were made from bedrock. The interesting bit is that Rex Lapis was ruthless during this time and always had a stone cold expression. I also need to mention this because apparently he also had a geo whale and a geo bird, which I'm not sure if that's supposed to be poetic or if it's very literal. If it's literal, I kinda wish we got a version where we have Zhongli summoning a whale. As cool as the meteor is, imagine just a giant whale crashing into your opponent. The next set I want to talk about is the tenacity of the Millelith set. This set is about the origin of the Millelith and their camaraderie with the nameless Yaksha that we now know was Bosacious. In Liyue's early history, it was a dangerous place, so people across Liyue's various regions swore allegiance to Rex Lapis by drinking from a golden cup. The soldiers from these regions became the Millelith. During the Cataclysm, a meteorite fell into the chasm and monsters from the abyss attacked Liyue. The Millelith defended Liyue, and a nameless Yaksha came to aid the Millelith because he wanted to fight. The nameless Yaksha and the Millelith successfully defended Liyue, but many died in the chasm. Connected to the Millelith set is the Remurian Hereafter set. This set was created by the people of Liyue to remember the deeds of the unnamed Yaksha and the Millelith that fought in the chasm. It's a pretty hopeful set about a place that is inherently devoid of it. Each piece has a vignette about remembering the sacrifice of the soldiers or Bosacious. The mask, I believe, is meant to resemble the Yaksha. There's also mention of the three Moon Sisters, Arya, Sonnet, and Canon, but they aren't the focus. The flower set is told from the perspective of a soldier. Quote, "The only thing I truly fear is to be lost and forgotten. Should ill fate dictate that I am to be buried in some nameless place, do not forget me." I like this set a lot because it gives spotlight to the bravery of regular non-vision users in the world of Teyvat, showing that they didn't need a vision to make a lasting impact on the world. Our last set about Liyue is the Echoes of an Offering set. This set is about Chenyu Vale, an adeptus named the Herb Lord, and various other myths. Tea is a key component of his culture. According to legend, the tea comes from a tree that was planted by an adeptus and only grows in Chenyu Vale because of a promise between two friends. Another legend is that the Herb Lord's adeptus form turned into an ancient tea tree. There's also a myth that there was a slab of jade on a mountain that would bring rain, but then demons coveted it, so it was destroyed. But this is what we do know. During the Archon War, the unnamed god of Chenyu Vale and his three adeptus, the Herb Lord, Fusion, and Lingwan, aka Bluey, fought Rex Lapis, but Rex Lapis was too strong, and as a final resort, the unknown god attempted to flood Chenyu Vale. This act of desperation caused the unknown god's adeptus to betray him, and as a result, the Herb Lord and Koi adeptus were greatly weakened. The first set I want to talk about that's about Inazuma is the Retracting Bolide set. This set is about Kitsune Saigu and is told from the perspective of an unnamed man. Throughout the man's life, he would run into Kitsune Saigu. His first meeting with her was at a summer festival when he was a young boy. He then randomly encountered her during the summer festival at different moments of his life. Lore-wise, this story isn't particularly crazy, it's just about a meeting and friendship between the human and yokai. The next Inazuma set is the Shimenawa's Reminiscence set. This set is about Asase Hibiki, a shrine maiden from Surumi Island, who came from Narukami to hone her skills as a shrine maiden. It describes her relationship with her mentor, Kitsune Saigu. At first, she was impulsive and stubborn and didn't understand Lady Saigu's words of wisdom. She then met a samurai named Takamine who taught her archery and they became close friends, which is something that Saigu would use to tease Hibiki. Eventually her shrine maiden training paid off and she became more mature and insightful. Saigu disappeared and Takamine had gone into the abyss, but when he came back he was corrupted, so Hibiki had to put him down. Eventually Hibiki would create her own shrine on Surumi Island. Moving on to the Emblem of Severed Fate set, this set is mostly told from the perspective of the Oni Mikoshi. His mother was a close friend of A, but became corrupted and was struck down by her. Mikoshi was exiled, but met a Tengu named Teruo. Mikoshi wanted to move on from his past, so Teruo gave him the name Iwakura, and she challenged him to become a worthy opponent. The two dueled many times, but Iwakura never won. It took 13 years of training until he was finally able to beat her. Iwakura would then become the Kujo clan's swordsmanship teacher and started a school, and he earned the title of Duyin. Here's a fun fact: as the Traveler, you can actually get a hidden achievement if you slay the remaining members of the Iwakura clan. Does it suck that the Traveler can accidentally destroy this man's legacy? Yes. Were the Primo Gems worth it? Of course they were. I would do it again, no hesitation. Moving on to another island, let's talk about the Ocean-Hued Clam set. This set is about the origin of Watatsumi Island. Pearls are also an important symbol for the set because many of the pieces were made from pearls collected by the Sea Daughters. The people of Watatsumi Island came from Enkanomiya. The first priestess was a daughter of the sea, and she sang songs for her people which inspired hope. Along with the priestess, there was also the vassal lord Tozanu, who was Obarashi's champion, and Ayame and Moon, twin warriors who also played a key role in the war between Watatsumi Island and Narukami. However, Dozanu and the twins would fall to the shogun's forces when A killed Orobashi. The priest's ceremonial garb is passed down from generation to generation. Trigger warning for this one because this is not a fun story. The next set I want to talk about is the Thundering Fury set. On Surumi Island, there was a tribe that worshipped a Thunderbird and would perform ritualistic sacrifices to thank her. One day, the Thunderbird heard a young boy named Ru singing, and the two quickly became friends. Ru gave her their name Katapasir, and he promised that he would sing for her the next time they met. The next time she saw Ru was at an altar because he was chosen as a sacrifice and his blood was in a goblet. Now here's the fun part. She didn't actually care about those sacrifices. In fact, she didn't care about this tribe at all. She only saw them as another type of animal. To her, this sacrifice was an incredible, cruel act, and she destroyed the village and placed a curse to avenge Ru. The curse will only be lifted if she hears his song once again. Last but not least, the set I want to talk about is the Husk of Opulent Dreams set. This set is about the Wanderer. The Wanderer was a prototype puppet created by A to hold a gnosis, which the artifact calls a heart. But he cried and A believed that he was too fragile to be a vessel, so she left him to rest in Shake Pavilion and was given a golden feather as proof of his relationship with the shogun. It's important to note that A wanted him to live his own life instead of being a puppet, but from the Wanderer's perspective, he saw this as a betrayal, which would be the first of many. He was then found by Katsuragi, but more importantly, he met Niwa Hisahide and was given the name Kabukimono. It was at this time that Dottore had come to Inazuma and, while disguised as a Fontainian engineer, sabotaged the Mikami furnace and made it deadly for its people. Kabukimono went to A to ask for help. Unfortunately, A had finished the Shogun puppet and was in the plains of Euthymia, so he was denied. He tried to show the golden feather to see Yaemiko, but she was helping with the Shogun, so no aid would come in time. Meanwhile, Dottore had killed Niwa and placed his heart in a box. When Kabukimono came back, Dottore instructed him to use the box and cleanse the furnace. Kabukimono had succeeded, then Dottore revealed the heart in the box, but he lied and said that the heart belonged to a servant that Niwa had killed, and that Niwa ran away. Kabukimono felt betrayed by Niwa and wandered alone. This is when he met a young boy that promised to live with him like family, but the child was ill and died. This was the third betrayal, and then Kabukimono joined the Fatui and became Scaramouche. As an act of revenge towards Niwa's betrayal, Scaramouche systematically destroyed the Raiden Gokuden, 5 bladesmithing schools that Niwa was a part of, but he only destroyed 3 out of the 5. It says that he stopped because he got bored, but I call bullshit, because he stopped after he met Niwa's descendant, who was adopted into the Kaitahara clan. The next region we're heading to is Sumeru. Our first set is the Deepwood Memory set. This set is several vignettes that are about the cycle of life and death. Rukkhadevata created Vyagara, the first lord of the forest, who was a tiger, and she gave him a crown. This crown was then passed on to his squire, Cinnamon. Cinnamon trained children to become guardians of the forest, and those guardians would become the current day forest rangers. The set also continues the story of Viridescent and reveals that she is killed by the Bloodstained Knight. There's also a section about Dottore's scheme to capture Aranara. I honestly have nothing to add here other than that this sounds like a plot from Very Odd Parents. Yeah, hey, so editor me here. Yeah, it turns out after some further research, Dottore used the Fatui to kidnap children and use them as bait to get the Aranara. Yeah, Dottore is not goofy evil, he's just evil. The Goblet piece is about a prince named Faramon from the desert region of Sumeru that usurped his father, and the political fallout caused him to become exiled and destitute. He would eventually understand the murmurs of the trees and the whispers of the tigers, and was accepted by the beneficent dream. His fate is unclear, but I believe that it was a poetic way to say that he died. The circlet ties the idea of the circle life together and talks about the creation of the Varuna device and the creation of the Aranara. Our next Sumeru set is the Gilded Dream set. This set is about King Deshret. Originally, Sumeru's desert was full of greenery until a divine nail turned it all to sand. The people divided themselves into tribes, and this is when King Deshret first rose to power. He was even offered a gnosis, but rejected it. Around the era of the Archon War, King Deshret and Nabu Malikata, the goddess of flowers, had befriended Lord Rukkhadevata, and the trio became known as the 3 God Kings of Sumeru. They divided their duties 3 ways. The banquet belonged to Malikata. authority was King Deshret's, and life was Rukkhadevada's domain. It was during these years that Sumeru truly prospered. King Deshret was in love with the goddess of flowers, and when she died, he built the Eternal Oasis. King Deshret's ultimate goal was to gain power greater than Celestia and make humanity the king of kings. So he would seek out forbidden knowledge but became corrupted, which would lead to a plague infecting his people. The Desert Pavilion Chronicle set is about Lilliput and the Jinn. The Jinn were created by the goddess of flowers, and when she passed, they served King Deshret because he claimed that the goddess of flowers was in a deep slumber and that he promised to help the Jinn find her. This was obviously a lie, and he used their power to build his eternal oasis. Lilliput fell in love with a shepherd named Ormazd and would bestow upon him a blessing because she believed that he would free the desert from slavery. Ormazd united the many tribes and became the king of Gorabad, but he became a tyrant, so Lilliput started her plan for revenge. Gorabad was an incredibly prosperous city. It was known as the City of Brass and the City of Kings. Lilliput and Ormazd had a daughter named Shirin, and Lilliput gave 3 premonitions. Shirin will fall in love with a great hero that will surpass her father. Shirin's relatives will enjoy a sweet end, and Shirin will be given sole possession of her father's kingdom. Lilliput also gave 3 admonitions or warnings. Shirin's joy will bring tears to her father's eyes. They should no longer feast together at the same table after she is wed, and Shirin's heir will be an ill omen for the kingdom. Ormazd rewarded a young hero named Kisra by adopting him and giving him the name Parvez, then arranged a marriage between Parvez and his daughter Shirin, but it was a loveless marriage because Parvez only married her to get to the throne. Angry at the reality of her life, Shirin conspired to get revenge by serving her father and her 300 siblings poisoned honey. Parvez took the throne and became Parvez Ravin. Shirin and Parvez Ravin had a son named Shirya, but he was banished because Parvez Ravin feared Lilliput's prophecy. Lilliput also advised Parvez Ravin to use the Jinn to power machines, which meant that many commoners lost their jobs. Shirya would use this to lead a rebellion against his father. Then Lilliput turned Parvez Ravin into a monster, and as if things couldn't get worse, a plague struck and Gorabad began to sink into the earth, leaving the people of Gorabad to become creatures that lost their language and faces. Lilliput was punished by King Deshret and was fragmented. The next set is the Flower of Paradise Lost. This set has more lore about the Jinn and the Goddess of Flowers. The Goddess of Flowers was from the heavens, but she and her race were cast out. She wandered the waste for 73 nights, and the wounds from her feet from walking through gravel turned into streams. Streams became gardens that grew water lilies, and those lilies created the Jinn. These Jinn begged Nabu Malikata to stay with them, so she did. She then met King Deshret and told him more about her origin. She lived in Celestia and was most likely part of the Seelie race. But the second who came brought war and illusions, and Celestia feared these illusions and sent down divine nails onto Teyvat. She warned King Deshret to not seek out the powers of Celestia or the Abyss, but he disagreed with her because he wanted to rebel against Celestia. Nabu Malikata saw the possibility that his plan could work, so she guided him to find this forbidden knowledge and used herself as a conduit in sacrifice. King Deshret built the Eternal Oasis, and eons later, the matriarchs of the Tanit and many other tribes would call themselves the Daughters of the Flower Goddess and would search for her resting place. Vorukasha's glow has lore about the Kavarina. The goddess of flowers knew that she was going to die, and she foresaw the Cataclysm, so she gave Rukkhadevada a shard of her Kavarina, which are spirits that are able to cleanse abyssal energy. Rukkhadevada would then turn the Kavarina into the divine bird Sigmur. Fast forward to the Cataclysm, and this is when the former Archon of Hydro, Egeria, is slain, and her body lands in Sumeru. Her body turns into a sea of pure dew called the Amrita. This is when Sigmur sacrificed itself by drinking the Amrita. By doing this, it did 2 things. 1. Sigmar burst and created the Pari. 2. A tree called the Harvest Topkin grew, which anchors Egeria's consciousness and acts as a seal over the abyss. Let's talk about the Golden Troop set. This set has lore about Remus, the old king of Remuria. This set is about a musician whose tribe was conquered by the kingdom of Remuria. Remuria was another glorious kingdom similar to Gorabad. The musician followed Remuria's soldiers to Capitolium, yes, that's the real name, and instead of becoming a slave, he became a warrior for Remuria. He rose through the ranks and became a Harmost, or a military leader for King Remus. His new name became Boethius. During Remus's conquest, Boethius conquered another tribe and met Cassiodor. The two bonded and became like brothers. Cassiodor would also become a Harmost, and became known as the Golden Hunter. However, just like Gorobod and the Mondstadt aristocracy, every kingdom has to end. A dragon prince named Cilia rallied Vishabs, Locknights, and Barbarians to rise up and rebel against Remuria. Cilia's forces destroyed Remuria's towers and their musicians, so Boethius ordered his forces to spare no one because they were not worthy. This led into a long-lasting war until both forces were swept away by the Abyss. It's also important to add that the people of Remuria turned into disfigured golems. Our next set is the Fragment of Harmonic Whimsy set. This set is about Remus. Remus's homeland was conquered by King Deshret, but instead of serving King Deshret, he wandered the world and found a ruined temple. Inside the temple, there was a silver tree with golden bees circling it. Here he learned of a prophecy from Sibylla that he would rule over a prosperous nation, but that nation would fall one day. While Remus's kingdom thrived, he could not feel satisfied because he was constantly worried about his kingdom's eventual downfall. This worry is what led to him searching for Egeria in hopes that she would have a solution to the prophecy. Remus found Egeria's prison, but it was guarded by Scylla, the dragon prince. He told Scylla his desire to stop fate, and Scylla laughed in his face because of how foolish it was, but he allowed Remus to speak with Egeria. Remus learned that Egeria was in prison for giving her Oceanids human life, but he did not learn how to stop fate. Despite walking away without a clear solution, Remus would dedicate his life to come up with a plan to save his people. His plan to free his people from fate was his golden symphony, Phobos. Phobos was meant to transfer the souls of Remurians into golden bodies so they wouldn't die. However, these Remurians viewed themselves as superior to others, which corrupted Phobos, and led Remuria to war against other Fontainian tribes. When Remus realized that his plan backfired, he tried to stop Phobos, but failed. As a final act of desperation, Remus created massive waves that consumed Remuria. The Song of Days Past is also about this era in Fontaine's history. There was a songstress named Irenaeus, who was an oracle for Egeria. She also came from the same tribe that Cassiodor came from, and her weapon is the same one that Farina uses for her signature weapon. She led her army to victory many times and convinced the tribes to pledge themselves to Egeria. It also talks about Irenaeus' quest to find the Pure Grail to restore Egeria's power. Irenaeus joined Scylla's rebellion and usurped King Remus and started the true Golden Era. The Locknights then searched for the Pure Grail and welcomed the Hydro Archon, which is when Fontaine was first founded. Irenaeus would also ask Egeria what could be done about Fontaine's prophecy. When Egeria told her the truth, Irenaeus fell into despair and left, never to be seen again. Moving forward in time, let's talk about the Nif's Dream set. This set is about the Narcissan Crux Institute. The Narcissan Crux Institute was an organization that raised orphans in Fontaine. The director of the institute was an Oceanid named Lyris, and the vice director was Basil Elton, a former admiral of the Fontaine Navy and was raised in the institute. We're going to focus on the last 4 children that were taken care of: Elaine, Renee, Marianne, and Jacob. The children of the institute enjoyed snacks made by Basil, and they would play pretend. Elaine would be the knight and Renee would be the dragon, and everything was good. The Cataclysm happens, Egeria dies, and this leads to Lyris and the other Oceanids to flee Fontaine. Meanwhile, Basil went on a mission to fight the monster Elenus, but dies. With no directors, the institute is disbanded. Marianne and Elaine are adopted by Emmanuel Guillotine, and as they grow up, they join the Marechaussee Phantom. Jacob and Renee were adopted by Carl Ingold and became adventurers. If you think this is a nice ending, don't worry, it gets worse. Jacob and Renee traveled to Sumeru and found abyssal power. While on this expedition, Jacob was dying of sickness, so Renee used the abyssal power to heal him, but it turned him into a neo-human, which extended his lifespan and he no longer needed sustenance. Renee explored Conrian and Fontainian ruins and discovered a prophecy that the Abyss would invade and destroy Teyvat. This discovery is what led Renee to use abyssal knowledge for their experiments and establish the Narcissan Crux Ordo. Renee's goal was to turn everybody into neo-humans so that they would survive the apocalypse. I'll save the gruesome details, but his first plan fails. Renee and Jacob did experiments with the primordial sea, and the second plan was to transcend the people of Fontaine by dissolving them and combining their wills into one consciousness. But they needed a pure Oceanid, which is when they found Lyris. It turns out that Lyris returned to Fontaine and was saddened by the fall of the Institute. She reluctantly joined the Ordo, and by using her essence and other materials, Renee became Narcissan Crux, or the Master. Elaine, Marianne, and the Marechaussee Phantom battled the Ordo and won, but there were a few consequences. Marianne was injured, but she ended up being dissolved and merged with Lyris. This combined consciousness is the Marianne that we meet in the World Quests. Our last set about Fontaine is the Marechaussee Hunter set. The Marechaussee Phantom are a detective force that investigates criminal activity. One member of the Phantom was Emmanuel Guillotine, the adopted father of Marianne and Elaine. Emmanuel was raised in the Narukami Institute with Basil, Carl Ingold, and Dwight Lasker. He was also pivotal during the siege of Poisson, which was an event that caused the deaths of Renee and Jacob's birth parents. Before Basil had to fight Elenis, she arranged for Emmanuel to take care of Marianne and Elaine in case she didn't come back. Emmanuel agreed to look after the two children even though he honestly had no love for children, but he did it anyways because his old friend had asked him to. Elaine also became an incredible researcher and created the Arc System and the Clockwork Mecha. He also created Seymour, who is capable of speech and thought, something that hasn't been replicated since. Fast forward years later, Emmanuel was investigating the Narukami Ordo and fought against the Master. Unfortunately, he lost the fight and was dissolved and absorbed into the Narukamis' consciousness. Before he died, he reflected on his life, and one of his biggest regrets was not being a better father figure to Marianne and Elaine. Another set is the Lava Walker's Epiphany. This set is about a sage that wandered the Mare Javari, which is an area that is theorized to be in Natlan. According to Nahida, it's a wasteland, and in the artifact description has a sea of lava. The Lava Walker made a circlet that could resist fire, but instead of praise, he was met with fear from his peers because it was blasphemous. Due to jealousy, a professor commanded his student explore the desert with the circlet. There he met a bird that could survive the flame and wandered for 100 years before dying there. He also maybe drank lava. The Unfinished Revelry set is about Natlan's history. In Natlan's past, there was a tyrant that ruled the land. During this time, a scarlet-eyed youth would form a team to take down the tyrant. The ones who joined him were Sakuk, the Daughter of the Mines, the twin heroes Atahualpa and Wasker, the Tassern warrior Yupanqui, and the Artisan. Together, they would defeat the tyrant. Now this is the more interesting bits. The Scarlet-Eyed Youth and the Artisan are never given names in this set. The Scarlet-Eyed Youth left after defeating the tyrant and returned to the Sacred Flame. As for the Artisan, long before he met his team, the Artisan had a tear dripped into his eye and he saw visions of elaborate machines, shadows driven by flames, and flowing golden patterns. It's not confirmed, but it would not surprise me if he gained celestial or abyssal knowledge. The reason that we don't know the Artisan's name is that there was a deliberate attempt to erase his name from history. I really hope that we get a world quest about him. The last 5-star set is the Nighttime Whisper set. This story is interesting because it's a frame narrative, which is when there's a story within a story. A young girl and her dog named Pi are in an attic reading a book with golden butterflies on the cover. The story she reads is about a young man who makes a deal with a witch. The young man is in love with the young woman, but instead of wishing to make her fall in love with him, the young man wishes that she has all the happiness in the world. The witch grants this wish, but for a price that will be paid in the future. The young woman is given all the happiness in the world. Everyone loves her and praises her. No matter how badly she treats her friends, they will always forgive her. She becomes wealthy. She becomes spoiled. All of this fortune is superficial and the young woman never truly becomes happy. So the young man and woman try to get rid of this curse. However, before they can be free of the curse, a witch comes back to get what she is owed. She imprisons the young girl in a bottle of ink and says she'll be a good character even in other stories. The fairy tale ends with the young man begging to be taken prisoner with the young woman. The girl reading the book wants to read this story to her mother and leaves the book in the attic. Quick rapid fire for the non 5-star sets. The Adventurer set is about an adventurer who gave it all up for the woman he loves. The Lucky Dog set is about a young boy named Lucky Dog who found a 4-leaf clover and became immune to all harm. No beasts or thieves could hurt him. One time he fell in a hole and he safely fell on a small pile of dust and found treasure at the bottom. The Traveling Doctor set is about a doctor that traveled all around Tevat saving people. Unfortunately, she died alone. The Tiny Miracle set is a set about small miracles that happen in everyday life, for example, flowers growing from tombstones, earrings made from the metal of ancient stars, and chance encounters with friends. The Instructor set is about a retired soldier that trains the future generation of soldiers so that they can be prepared. The Berserker set is about a warrior named the Berserker who lives alone tending to his garden. During a war between mortals and gods, his homeland and garden were destroyed. He lost his sanity and went insane. He fought everything in his path and died in the battlefield. The Martial Artist set is about a martial artist who dedicated his life to training and discipline, and he became an instructor when he got older, but he kept training just as hard. The Gambler set is about a woman that used many gadgets to get the advantage when gambling, especially when those stakes were life and death. The Scholar set is about a scholar who spent her life devoted to her studies, but that pursuit of knowledge is endless. Having failed to find the answer she was looking for, she once hesitated and questioned her career choice, thus wasting further time. Wait, that's just like me when I switched my major in college. Finally, the Praetor's headpiece. Long ago, people would wear these headpieces and hear revelations from Celestia. For a while, it was prosperous, but then the people would question the heavens. So they questioned the heavens' authority and schemed to enter the Garden of Gods. And though they had promised to the people divine love, prosperity, and wisdom, the envoys of heaven were angry, for to question eternity was forbidden, for earth to challenge sky inexpiable. There's also a cyclical nature to these crowns, with one era leading to another. If you made it this far, thank you so much, I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me ramble on about artifacts for what is essentially 30 minutes. I'm gonna be honest, this video was a pain to make. I struggled basically every step of the way making this, from research all the way to editing. I personally learned more about artifact lore and the world of Genshin. I hope you learned something about it. So yeah, let's go hang and I'll see you guys next time.